Okay, so if you're like me and you enjoy upgrading to the newest tech, which I will honestly say is an addiction, the 2020 iPad Pro 12.9 inch with the A15Z chip has been with me and survived for the last 3 years. And here's some long-term thoughts and reflections on my personal thoughts if you're thinking of purchasing a used one. I'll assume most of you who are watching this fall into two camps. You bought this a few years ago and have patiently waited to see if there would be more substantial updates than the M1 and M2 chip. This camp, which I fall into, is debating whether we should just upgrade to the M1 or M2 iPad Pro or hold out for the 2024 iPad Pro. The second camp is in the market for a used iPad Pro, and you're considering whether you actually need the M1 or M2 iPad or if the A15Z, the Gen 4 iPad Pro, will suffice. Maybe your current iPad is really struggling, or you're thinking of treating yourself or someone else. For the second camp, I'll skip over the specs. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you've already watched dozens of videos that have gone through the differences between Gen 4, Gen 5, and Gen 6 of the iPad Pro and the 12.9 inch. And instead, I'll share 1, general thoughts, 2, pros, 3, cons, and 4, my suggestions. Having used this for the last 2 years, I've come to realize that my iPad Pro is definitely a luxury item. There's a very small gap, in my opinion, between the iPhone and a MacBook Pro, and Apple has really tried to fill this gap with all of their iPads. I say small gap because no one needs an iPad. The iPad OS is limited, and anyone who has one will tell you that it can't replace their MacBook. Literally anything the iPad can do, the MacBook can do much better. So why a luxury item? It very much feels like a well-engineered piece of engineering. The glass, the thin form factor, and the smooth ProMotion makes you feel like you're holding something that Tony Stark would have designed 10 years ago. And the only times I really use it are 1, when I'm laying on the couch, 2, when I want a slightly more immersive experience than my iPhone, and 3, when I don't need my full-on MacBook Pro for whatever meeting or cost or whatever I'm doing. Quick pros. Number 1, the display is still amazing. Despite being almost 4 years old, ProMotion is extremely smooth, the display is crisp, and it can show 4K videos easily. Number 2, it's slightly thinner and lighter than the M1 and M2 iPad Pro. Number 3, the durability has proven to be excellent. Granted, I have no issues and I've used the Magic Keyboard case this whole time. And number 4, it's really nice to sometimes to just be able to reach for whatever's in front of you. And what I mean by that is if you look at modern cars, even though some cars still have buttons, most of them have touch screens now, and for the purpose of being able to reach for something that you want to do, as opposed to fumbling around and searching for a button. So the iPad Pro offers that versatility of being able to just reach for something, to tap it, to scroll, which is a luxury, in my opinion, versus, of course, a MacBook Pro. Con number 1 is that the battery life is pretty bad, but I think this is across the board. iPads aren't known for their excellent battery life, or at least the iPad Pros with ProMotion, in my experience. Plus, this is also getting a few years old. Number 2 is that it only has 6 gigabytes of RAM, and one might wonder, why do you need more than that? But I often use Safari with multiple tabs, and I have a spreadsheet open also in Google Sheets in Safari, which may seem kind of redundant when they already have a Google spreadsheet. But I like the Safari user interface because it feels more like my actual MacBook. And the spreadsheet that I use has a lot of information, multiple tabs. So every time I go between different tabs on Safari, I find that it has to refresh the entire Excel spreadsheet, or it automatically erases some of the other tabs that are open. Sometimes this happens between apps when I have a lot of things open, but definitely with that Google Spreadsheet app. So the 6 gigabytes of RAM for me feels like a huge limit as to what you can actually do on the iPad Pro. Number 3 is that the iPad and the Magic Keyboard aren't actually that light. I could throw up the numbers here, but when you're carrying it around, you feel the weight in your backpack. You feel it with one hand. You actually have to grab it firmly because it feels chunky. It feels like, you have to hold this, put some strength into it. I can definitely imagine if you're a smaller person, you would have to make sure you're really grabbing onto this thing or definitely using two hands. And the last point is that the iPad Pro, despite having the Pro name, doesn't really feel like a Pro item to me. Despite being a 12.9 inch screen, it still feels really small and cramped, and I would definitely not recommend this for anyone who wants to use this as their primary piece of technology for getting things done. For people in the first camp, it's pretty clear that we should probably wait for 2024 to see what the new iPad Pro will look like. For people in the second camp, however, it really depends on why you're using the iPad Pro. If you're using it like I do when you're just laying on the couch or on your bed and you're watching some NFL highlights or some tech reviews, or maybe you're, watching Netflix, this will probably work great for you. You don't need the M1 or M2 chip, in my opinion, just because the biggest limiting factor, again, is RAM more than the processor. Number 3, if you're gifting this to someone who wants to play a game or two and just wants a really nice screen, or if they just want to maybe take down some notes on their iPad in class because maybe the keyboard doesn't really help them in their note taking, this is perfect for them. However, if you're planning on using this as a powerhouse, I would stay way clear away from this. The iPad Pro can't do that for you, and multitasking is frustrating at best. Plus you'll need the Magic Keyboard to really even try to do anything. Okay, so the Magic Keyboard in 4 bullet points. Honestly, this thing is awesome. It's been a few years, so it's showing some wear and tear, and I do have a skin over it, but you can see the wear and tear on the edges. It's built incredibly well. There's no parts. The hinge still works great, and the form factor just looks really nice, the way that the iPad is floating there. Number 2, it's heavy, but it's not so heavy that I don't want to use it. Because the keyboard and trackpad gives so much versatility, and the fact that I can just lift my arm and grab the iPad off of it and put it back on when not in use is a luxury, and it feels great to use. Number 3, definitely buy one if you plan on getting an iPad Pro. Make sure you just purchase the right one, because the M1 and M2 iPad Pro are slightly thicker, so it won't fit perfectly. It'll struggle a little bit if you get the wrong size. At this point in time, I've shared all my thoughts, and I hope you found this helpful. It's weird, I've actually really enjoyed using my iPad Pro, but every time I use it, I have in the back of my mind, man, this would probably be a little bit better on my MacBook Pro in terms of, I'm able to put ad blockers on my Mac OS, etc. But for some odd reason, sometimes I still just grab for the iPad Pro, and it's for that reason I still haven't sold it yet, and I still hold on to it. Thanks for watching.